All right, welcome to the Humility Quest. Today we have Dr. Glenda Wren Gordon. She is actually one of my classmates from West Point, which, you know, it's been great because we've got to know each other a little bit while we were at school, and we've got a pretty tight community there that has stayed tight, and we haven't talked to each other. I don't know, it's probably been a long time, but once we reconnected again, it was like just like being right back then, like no time lost whatsoever. It has been fantastic. And the more that we're trying to do what we're doing here at the Humility Quest to support companies like the Bravo Charlie Initiative, which is 100% designed for, you know, reconnecting the class of 1999. And, you know, the big part of that, like, got us to start the Bravo Charlie Initiative was because we learned of just how many people in our class have, you know, ultimately died from suicide. And then learning what you do, I was like, wow, this is a perfect fit. So I'm just so glad to have you on our show, Glenda.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, good stuff. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Glenda.
Sure. I am an adult psychiatrist by training and health policy researcher. That's my background. So I spent the first part of my career in full-time academia doing resilience research, health disparities research, health policy research, and doing system improvement work. And then in 2017, I transitioned to join a startup company to help them build a model for opiate-addicted pregnant women that then expanded. We got acquired, and now I'm the chief clinical officer for a value-based behavioral health company called Mindula Health. We're the nation's largest provider of virtual collaborative care, which is behavioral health integrated into primary care. And we also have population health programs where we partner with health plans to manage the mental health of specific populations. So we have a suicide reduction program, intimate partner violence reduction program, programs for people with both medical and psychiatric co-occurring illnesses, and the substance exposed living program. So I do that part-time, and I'm still on the faculty at Morehouse School of Medicine, where I'm an associate professor. I supervise residents. I am still actively clinically operating as a collaborative care psychiatrist. I have 2 neighborhood clinics that I cover, and I have an elective that I'm the course director for. So, you know, I have a lot of free time.
I mean, that is a lot of stuff. And just knowing you the way that I do, I also know that you have an incredibly large heart. Just the amount that you just like care for people, right? Like and for me, like specifically, I just know about like our classmates and how much you care for them and the things that you're like willing to do to help them out. It's I don't know. And just like that on top of all the other stuff that you do is incredible. So I don't think I could do any justice in the world of, you know, mental fitness and like trying to talk about it and extract stuff from you. So this conversation is just going to kind of go wherever it is that it decides to go, because I know that, you know, you're just a plethora of information. But like, I think a good place to start is going to be in our first conversation about just mental fitness in general and about the Humility Quest and what we're doing. You had said something that kind of, you know, struck a chord with me that actually had an impact on the course and direction of the Humility Quest. And so that thing was, you said like when you talk to people, right, as a psychologist, when people come in and you talk to them, like you get results, you work with them and they start to get better, right? Like, are things perfect after the first time? Of course not, right? But like you actually help people get to a place where, you know, they can function with their mind again and all those kinds of wonderful things. And you know, but you said the problem was that it's like meeting people where they are and getting them to come into you, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that's a big part of what I think I'm going to use the Humility Quest for, is to help people get there, right? You know, and so I'll just kind of interlude a little bit again with like my story and coming to like into mental fitness. My first little dab into mental fitness was, you know, when I was still in the Army. I was a commander of a small unit, and we had a little family get together, and one of my soldiers, like his wife, like I was meeting the family, and his wife was going to college, and I said, oh, what are you studying? And she said, psychological pathology. And I was like, I was not expecting that, even a little bit. But as the conversation went on, she was like, hey, you know what? I need a case study for my current course. Like, would you be willing to be my case study? And I was like, okay, it's kind of something I'm all about, personal improvement. Like, yeah, let's do it. And through that process, you know, she was able to get me to see my own mind in ways that like I hadn't ever thought of looking at it before. And it opened up a whole world of, you know, just like what's happening inside my mind, which even after that experience, I still didn't go out and seek any type of like mental coaching or therapy or any of those kinds of things until many years later, like over 20 years later, I think, where I was reading a book from somebody that I kind of knew already, and they talked about their mental fitness coach. They didn't use those words, but I was like, oh yeah, you know, like I could see how that would be really helpful for the things that I'm trying to do. I contacted with him, and he's been my, you know, mental fitness coach ever since. And like the world of difference that it makes is, you know, in one aspect, I'm kind of like, why did I waste so much time, you know, trying to like running around in circles, trying to figure all this stuff out, where like the one thing that really kind of puts everything else into perspective is getting, you know, like mental fitness. So anyways, with all that, like, my thought is like, what are some of your thoughts on that? Yeah, go ahead.
Most people are probably surprised to hear that the statistic about how long it takes for people to get into mental health treatment. You know, you obviously didn't have like a severe, you know, extreme serious mental illness or diagnosis, but we actually have studies that show the average length of time for people that have like the most severe mental conditions is measured in decades. So it can be 1 or 2 decades for somebody that has severe post-traumatic stress disorder, severe psychosis, severe substance use to ever get into formal treatment. So it makes sense that for those that are kind of dealing with the normal stressors of life that's within the realm of normal experience, that would still benefit from psychological support, short-term medications even, that it's not going to be on their radar to get help. And I talk about this in terms of like, there's a concept called the theory of mind, which is like the story you tell yourself about who you are as a person and how your mind is working and what your thoughts are. And everybody actually has a theory of mind, whether that's from like a faith tradition that you were raised to learn different things about your mind, or whether, you know, just even if you weren't, you have some idea about how your mind works. But most people do not have a theory about their liver or about their pancreas or any other organ or part of their physical body. So when that starts hurting, they're like, not sure what to do with this thing that's not working on my body. I should probably see a doctor about that. But you could have the same level of dysfunction and impairment operating in your mind and your emotions, but you're gonna still keep trying to like make it better on your own a lot of the time. So I figured this out early in my career as a psychiatrist when I kept like asking people how did they come to treatment, and like I was like, I really wish I would have seen you 20 years ago. 25 years ago, I could have saved you that failed marriage. I could have helped you out with the job that you lost. I could have really helped you like live a good life. And so I started really studying the system of care and the psychology of how people sought help for mental health to figure out like, is my best way of helping in the world in the consulting room as a psychiatrist, where it's going to take a lot of people, or actually maybe I'm going to be helpful getting out into the community or finding other modalities to connect with people to meet them where they are. So a lot of my career has been trying to figure that out and test out different ways to connect with people. And I came up with my own personal like framework for what needs to happen. Like, I believe in my ideal future is one where everybody can get help for their mind in places where they feel welcomed and safe. The full range of what help means. So from like mental fitness coaches to pastoral care to traditional treatment. And for that to happen, there's 3 parts of this vision I made up. The first part is that people have to have confidence that their inherent human dignity is not going to be violated when they go and get help. And historically, our traditional psychiatric system hasn't promised that, because we locked people up, we held them in basements, chained them to the floor. Really not great. So we have a little bit of a...
Like electroshock therapy?
Well, now that's a whole other topic. ECT is actually very effective. It's what I would want. If I ever got psychotic depression, I would want ECT, because I'd want to be better in 3 treatments and not waiting 6 weeks. That's for another topic. But the old school One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest version of ECT, not nice. That's not nice. So that's important. You have to have confidence that, like, you know, people are afraid they're going to get locked up. They're afraid you're going to have your mind like, you're not going to get help if you think your dignity is going to be violated. That's number one. So there's ways that you can then try to intervene. The second is that you've got to know, like you have to have information. So before, again, my people, we held on to secret information. It was almost like this secret society. You had to go through years of analytic training to have all this special knowledge. You had to, invest all this money to get access to that. But that's not the way to help people get help. You need to have accurate information about what are mental health conditions, what are their names, what are their symptoms, how are they diagnosed. You have to teach this to kids in schools. Like, you have to know this before you need it. You have to have it known within media. They have to be accurate in their portrayal. So I've done a lot of work with journalists and with media organizations to help them report better and more accurately around mental health. Commonly, you think of like after shootings and stuff. We've done a lot better in how we report now than we used to in the past. And the third part is that you have to have access to a personal social network that's going to recognize when like you're not okay, and they're going to know what to do to help you get the help that you need. And that goes back to how people seek help for their mental health, where they're just going to try to figure it out on their own. So you can't put the burden on the person themselves. It's really the people around that person. That's why what you're doing with the buddy checks is so key, because the person who's lost in the storm is lost in the storm, and they're like figuring out how to make it to tomorrow. And maybe that's all they can muster is like just showing up for the next day. And so they're drowning. That's not the time to be like, buddy, you really should have learned how to swim. And like, that's not the time for that. That's time to freaking, throw out the life vest and get them out so that they don't drown. Yeah. So that's my philosophy. That's my orientation. And I think it's helpful to share that because it kind of informs my version. Otherwise, you just say, oh, she's some psychiatrist, researcher type. And then you're going to like, that's who I am. That's what I believe. And that grounds a lot of the work that I do, and why it's so important to me to be there for our classmates or really anybody who's in my sphere of influence if I have something that's going to save your life, I'm going to offer it to you. Connections, helping you navigate the system, because it's very hard to do. Because I know I'm in it every single day, and that can make the difference between somebody getting help sooner versus having to be at a hospital, which is like the last resort. That's like failure, like saying you should go into liver failure and need a liver transplant when we have other ways to not have you be in stage 4 for mental health. So I think that's really key, and I love what you're doing. Yeah, thank you.
Can you just kind of list those 3 things again? So there was dignity, being aware that of what the symptoms are, and then the third one is having access. Those were the 3?
Yep, personal social network. Those are the 3.
Yeah. Which one do you think is like the most important, or the thing that keeps people from coming in? But I think it's really all 3.
It's really all 3. I view it as a stool. The seat of the stool is this principle of no wrong door. So there can't be a wrong door. So whether you're like at school exhibiting behaviors that suggest something's not right, if you're at work, if you're in your home, if you're visiting family, if you're calling a friend, if you're getting your hair cut. I mean, there are people that have barbershop initiatives. I've consulted with some of these projects that are like, we're in barbershops, we're in grocery stores. We're doing mental health screenings anywhere a person is at. Those things feed into this 3-legged stool, because the whole idea is there can be no wrong door. Wherever you are in the world, you're connecting someone else with some other human being, and that person needs to be equipped to be able to it's just like CPR. It's literally the same as that. Like, we now get it. You shouldn't have to die from a heart attack if you witness someone going down. Everybody should have CPR training to keep you alive. It's like the best thing to keep you from not dying from a heart attack.
Yeah. As you go through it, right? Like, looking at it from a lens of mental fitness, right? Like, a lot of the things that we talk about are like recognizing the signs of something happening, right? So there's the philosophy or the posture of like taking something from something that is like sick or broken or whatever and like getting it up to normal, right? And then there's the side of taking something that is like normal and like bringing it like in, like raising the average of it, like bringing it up, making it better, right? Yeah, optimizing, right? And a lot of like things in like technology kind of end up going that way, right? Where first, like, somebody will try some experimental thing to fix something that was broken, right? And then once it's like proven and people are like, oh, hey, that works, right? Then other people are like, oh, here's how I can use it to like make it get an advantage, or help people that are higher, right? And it's interesting, right? Like, when I was in high school, like I played high school sports. And so I had a coach, somebody who like would help us do that. In fact, like I think the biggest difference is that like I couldn't get on the team or play the sports without the coach, right?
Yes.
But then once I left high school or left college, right, and I'm off doing my own thing, right? Like I'm off in the world, there's no coach, right? There's no teacher anymore. There's nobody there like telling me like, oh, here's the way to go, here's the things to do, right? But like in pretty much any given field that I can think of, people who like rise to the top of those industries, right? Like they all have coaches, right? They all have somebody or a group of people who are helping them, right? Not just get work done, but they're helping them make decisions as well, right? They're helping them go through all these things. And, and it's usually, again, it's not like one person, it's like a group of people that they're like hiring to do all these things. And so...
Yeah. Can I tell you something? I have explained this to my kids, especially my sons, because it's the idea of asking for help. For some reason, as humans, we're like allergic to the idea of asking. I don't know what happened. Is it a miracle? When did we go from interdependence and like we're all gonna go hunt this lion together and we need each other, or we're all gonna go like make this meal? Like back in the olden days, like we're different, but now we're just all these silos, and we've all bought into this notion of like I'm supposed to be a complete entity, completely independent and able to operate myself. And it obviously, we learned this early because my children, I'm for getting help, but I've had to explain to my kids, like, you're trying to, even the youngest one that's 5, I'm like, I'm right here, like if you would like listen, I can help you. And like, he's got to figure it out. So there's something obviously, like teleologically speaking, there's some benefits to our like drive to just figure it out on our own and problem solving, right? But then there's a shadow side to that. So I've told my boys, I've had the example of like LeBron James, like he's got a whole team, like he's in every aspect of his life. You think it's because he needs help in every aspect? Like, no, especially now, like, he's probably smart enough to figure things out. But the people that have the means, they have helpers in every domain of their life. And so unless you think you're like better than Oprah or LeBron or like these exceptional human beings, probably you need to ask for help. So like, now I get them academic coaches and like because I have the means to provide that for them. But it took me a while to get them to have some type of reframe in their mind where it wasn't like I'm defective and so I need help, where it was like the optimization frame was like, oh yeah, I got it like that. So yeah, I got myself a coach and, I'm working on this. And, I think that just it's more acceptable to us to think of optimization or fitness than it is like, I'm broken and I need help. Nobody wants to say that.
Yeah, right. Nobody does want to say that. And like I think particularly in America, right, we are very, very individualistic, right? And just like rugged individualism, right? And when you think of like, the American dream, right? Like when I hear the American dream, that gets translated in my brain as like, the self-made man, right? Like somebody who went out on their own and like, made it happen. And like most of our movies, right? Most of the movies that we like and we watch, right? Like it's of some story where somebody went from like, basically rags to riches, right? In one sense or another, right? Where they started off where they couldn't do something and they figured it all out. And like now look at them, they're saving the world, right? And it's a really, and so like obviously like all those movies and all that stuff, right? Like it influences us, but it also speaks to us because like it's a part of how we think, right?
It is.
But like you were saying, like the awareness piece, like I think it was number 2, right? Like just like knowing like what signs to look for and all those kinds of things. I think that it's, the best way to like know that is like if everyone somehow, like if not saying that like, like the government should get together and provide for this or something, but like if somehow everyone like had a mental fitness coach, right? Yes. If it was just like a normal thing where it's like, yeah, like I've got a mental fitness coach. I always feel this sense of like well-being and like I'm ready to go. And like you'd be easy to recognize it when people aren't, right? And it's not so much that you have to like go do something about it. Like, oh, hey, like, hold on. All right, what did my coach say? The 3 things. Okay. Not even so much that, but just like recognizing and be like, oh, hey, like, have you been talking to like a mental fitness coach? Like, have you gone to see anybody about this stuff? Like I do. Like, have you?
Yeah.
You should, right? And even in places like, like obviously we were in the Army for a long time, right? And for me, like the higher I went in rank, I didn't get that far. As I got command and I had to get like a top secret clearance and all these things. And it asks you questions like, have you ever had like a mental health concern? Like, have you ever gone to see a psychologist, right? Like it asks you questions like that. And I didn't do a ton of research to figure out like what would happen if I said yes to this. I don't know.
It's not good. There were not good things that would happen. Yeah.
Right, and which is my thought, right?
It's in medicine too. I mean, there's a lot of policy changes to ban that. If you're like applying for state licensure, there's some states that would flag, which is like the exact opposite of what you'd want to do, right? Is to create a disincentive. So there have been some changes over time with that policy, but I was going to mention how we've changed over time. I have old kids and young kids, and one of the good things that I've seen over the past, decade or so is introduction of social emotional learning in schools. So my children actually have language, emotional language, and recognizing and naming feelings and being aware of feelings, and just being able, like downstairs I have these pillows, it's like the feelings wheel, so you can like be specific, like, how are you feeling? Bad. Okay, let's like be a little bit more specific. Let's pick a feeling from the feelings wheel. How exactly are we feeling?
Yeah.
And so they're learning this.
I mean, that's a hard thing for me to do.
Mad, they say like kids that are mad and sad can't add. So, if you don't address the feelings in a child, they're not going to be optimized in how they learn. So that's great. But like for the rest of us though, we're going to need we need something, that we can access, right, that we feel isn't threatening, that can help us. So, I mean, it sounds like mental fitness coaching has really been that thing for you. And I love that for you. There's all kinds of spokes on the wheel that can help a person get to a place of living a good life. I mean, that's the ultimate outcome that we want, is living a good life.
Agreed. At the end of the day, like, what does living a good life means? I think that's different for everybody.
Different for everybody.
The way that I think about it, though, is like, it's a little extreme, I guess. Have you ever read, I'm sure you have, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning?
Of course. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably your curriculum. When I think about like being able to live a good life, right? Like my thoughts are, would the things that I'm talking about and trying to apply, right? Like, would they apply if I was in like, a concentration camp someplace? Would it still apply? It's like, oh, well, you gotta eat 3 eggs. You gotta make sure that your tofu is like, the perfect consistency. Like, you do all those things, you're gonna have a great life, right? I'm like, well, those things really wouldn't work in a concentration camp, right? Like, and so like I try to think about those things, like, would this stuff work in a concentration camp? When I think about like what the Army does, now that we brought up that example, the Army makes sure that like you go out and run every day, right? You do PT every single day with your unit, you're doing all this stuff. So they want to make sure that you're physically fit in the Army. But like more and more today, the things that we're doing are very emotionally taxing. Right? The decisions that we're making nowadays, the way that the battlefield is changing, and how people are like, basically they know what we will and won't do. And so they start, our enemies will start building stuff like in the bottom of schools and like stuff like that, like IEDs, right? Like, yeah. That is such a terrorizing thing to deal with. When you're driving down the road, right? Like I got friends of mine today that like, if we're driving down the road and there's like a trash bag on the side of the road, like they will slow down, they'll turn, right? Like they just won't go down that road, or right, like they'll just silently suffer through it, and they'll like, you can see them, like they'll stop talking and whatever, right? Like it's insane. Like it's a whole different thing. All right. So anyways, I was just thinking about like how it would help the Army, like the military, a lot if that kind of thing was just like part of being in the military, just like PT is part of being in the military.
Kevin, this was a great idea. And in 2011, I was part of the team that helped implement Comprehensive Soldier Fitness, which was the idea of taking every of the standards for physical fitness and introducing training to help you attend to your mental fitness as well. So Brigadier General Rhonda Cornum and Casey helped helped lead that effort. And I happened to be at Penn that same time that Marty Seligman, who was a lead psychologist who was leading that effort, was adapting a resilience program for teachers to the military. So I was a Robert Wood Johnson clinical scholar, and he found out I was a West Point graduate, and I was like, I looked at the curriculum and I was like, man, this is like way too soft. Like, we're gonna have to like militarize like 80% of the language here. So I was part of the culture adaptation team that helped to translate the language into ones that people could actually hear and take in. We developed master resilience trainers. They have a new name now. I forget what they're called now, but they still have some form of existence. And they were basically like teaching the fundamental skills about communication, about certain things like counteracting counterproductive thinking and stopping catastrophic thinking, like these things that are very important psychologically, but introducing them in basic training. Part of just how you're taught how to fold your socks, and you're taught how to do everything in the military. They have a particular way. And so why would we just leave it up to you to deal with your mind? Like, that doesn't make any sense, especially now with the threats and the nature of the threats and the risk for moral injury, on top of just trauma in general. Like, that is a whole level of, not even in the DSM, but it's a whole nother issue, that the current construct of the ways in which, war, so to speak, is being fought. So yeah, that's a whole nother genre of work that I've had a chance, been very blessed to be a part of that.
Wow. Yeah, incredible. You've done so much, Glenda. Every time I talk to you, I learn more about the stuff that you've done and that you're doing, and it just blows my mind. Thank you for all that you do.
I'm still here. You know my story. I almost died when I was 20 years old, so I kind of figured there was something I was supposed to do with my life, since I'm not 6 feet under pushing up daisies. So that's the main motivation, is like, I want to make it count. I want to make God be like, yes, I knew I should have saved her.
Oh, that's good stuff. All right. Well, so why don't we wrap this up, Glenda? Tell us a little bit. I've been following you on Instagram with Soul Steps. So just tell us a little bit about that, where we can find you. I'd love to hear more about your books as well.
A month ago, I started Soul Steps with Dr. Ren, which was kind of an experiment. I have, for my mental fitness, I have about an hour and a half to 2 hour morning routine that, for me and my, spiritual orientation, I have a set of practices that really just help me to orient myself for the day. And a lot of times I would do that and then write a reflection about it, share it with friends, or call a friend and tell them about it. And people would say, like, that's so great. I loved reading your word of the day, or I loved, talking to you about that thing. And I said, maybe I could just share that with a broader group of people. So that's how I started Soul Steps, and you can find that on YouTube, Soul Steps with Dr. Ren, and it's about 30 minutes. It's usually not longer than 30 minutes every day, and it's basically like if we were just going to say, hey, Kevin, you want to go for a walk? And we would just like walk and talk, and I would tell you about whatever spiritual topic. Like today, I was talking about this very specific topic of like the fourth commandment of honor your mother and father, and like how do you make sense of that if like your mother or father doesn't necessarily hasn't earned, honor. And so I kind of broke that down into how to think about that, which, after Thanksgiving, a lot of people spent time with their parents, and, you might be like, you're pretty hard to honor. So I talked about that, and just different, it's just real talk, practical applications for a parent for life. And it's what I'm doing. So it's like things I'm struggling with, things that I'm learning about. I'm on Instagram too. I usually do a 3-minute snack, and my Instagram handle is Queen Lulu. So I think if you put my actual real government name in there, you can find me there too on Instagram. And I do have one book that's already out on Amazon. It is called Wedding Planning from the Heart. And it was a book that I wrote inspired by my marriage, and then subsequent conversations with people on airplanes and clients and couples, just realizing that the wedding industry is totally wackadoodle, and you can really get lost in that. But if you have a vision for your wedding day that you make with your partner that's grounded in your love story and your values, then you can kind of create a celebration that you're still joyous about. So I've been married 17 years now, and I still love my wedding day, and it's still joyous because we planned it from the heart. So that's that book is out, and I just finished my second book, which is called Before I Speak, which is a devotion book. It's a Christian orientation that is 40 days to guard your mouth and grow in grace. And I'm very sharp with my words, so I have spent 47 years learning how to think before I speak, how to guard my words. That's going to be available soon. So
that's awesome. I can't wait. Thank you so much, Glenda. All right, we will talk to you soon. Take care.
All right, bye.